Today I will be discussing my huge problem with MCU Spider-Man in Phase 4. Yo, what is going on, you guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the big issue with MCU Spider-Man in Phase 4 at this current point in time. But if you are new around here and enjoy all types of Spider-Man content from news and theories and videos like this, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to not miss another video as soon as it comes out on the channel. You can be one of the first to watch the videos and be in the loop with all of the news. But with that being said, let's get straight into this. So what is my huge problem with MCU Spider-Man? Well, going into Phase 4, we've got to the point where Marvel are making shows about multiple different things with multiple different storylines at the same time. Obviously, we have the multiverse saga, but we also have things like Moon Knight, we have things like She-Hulk, things that don't really incorporate themselves into the mainline story, or at least they don't just yet. Almost making this cinematic universe comic book-like where stories are happening all over the place. However, this is causing a massive issue for the MCU. Because there are so many things happening everywhere all at once, there is a means for certain characters to show up in certain situations. One of the main characters that is obliged to this rule in the comics is Spider-Man, due to the fact that a lot of stuff in the Marvel Universe takes place in and around New York, meaning that Spider-Man would have full access to any events that would go down. And this is where my problem with MCU Spider-Man comes in, because when it comes to any other actors and characters that Marvel Studios has full control over, they can just throw them in whatever show they want. A prime example of this is Charlie Cox's Daredevil, who will be showing up in She-Hulk, Echo, and his own Daredevil show, whilst he also did show up in Spider-Man No Way Home as well. That is 4 projects in the space of a couple of years. And it makes sense for Daredevil to show up in these shows. It makes sense in She-Hulk because he has that lawyer connection. It makes sense in Echo because Echo is going to be exploring the street level stuff in the MCU. And obviously his own show makes sense. And Spider-Man No Way Home makes sense because, well, Peter needed a lawyer. So throw Matt Murdock in there. He's in New York. Why not put Matt Murdock in that movie? These same situations can be applied to MCU Spider-Man, as the finale of Falcon and the Winter Soldier took place in New York. And in fact, the writers of Falcon and the Winter Soldier even wanted to put Spider-Man in the finale. 1, because it would be cool as hell, but number 2, it would just make sense. And the fact that he didn't show up with such a big level threat in New York taking place just doesn't sit right with me. It breaks continuity. Carly was literally running a big extremist organization, and you're telling me Spider-Man didn't show up? In my opinion, Spider-Man is there with no questions asked. The same happened with She-Hulk. The same way that Daredevil shows up because of that lawyer connection, the writers have even come out and said that they would have loved to have used Spider-Man in some funny legal scene. But now you're asking, well, why can someone like Daredevil do all of this, but Spider-Man can't show up in the places where you would expect him to? That is due to the rights of Spider-Man being owned by Sony Pictures. The rights state that Disney and Sony have both agreed to a contract that allows them both to collaborate on MCU Spider-Man solo movies, but allows Marvel Studios to put Spider-Man in their movies a limited number of times. Currently, Tom Holland has 1 movie left on his contract, which will most likely be a bigger event movie, possibly Avengers The Kang Dynasty, Avengers Secret Wars, or potentially the Fantastic Four movie. Now, whether this previous contract allows for him to show up in MCU shows as well as movies, we don't actually know, because we know this contract was signed before the MCU started making shows and putting them on Disney+, so whether the shows count under the contract, we don't know, and maybe that's why he wasn't allowed to appear in Falcon and the Winter Soldier and She-Hulk. But at the same time, this is my big issue with MCU Spider-Man, and it all leads back to the rights. It's the fact that he is the flagship character of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Going forward, he's probably the most popular character that is in the MCU at this point in time. Apart from Doctor Strange, the Fantastic Four, and eventually when the X-Men show up, Spider-Man is the big character. He is the top dog. He is the new Iron Man of the MCU. And I don't mean that literally, I mean that metaphorically, in the fact that he's really popular with the audience. He's really popular in terms of the universe. Anything that happens in New York and Spider-Man is instantly there, the same way he would be in the comics. However, because of the rights issues, this causes a massive issue within the MCU, with writers even coming out and saying that they would have loved to have used Spider-Man and characters from the Spider-Man mythos that would make total sense in their story, but couldn't because of the rights. Now, I'm not saying Sony should just sign the rights over to Disney so we could have the continuity with Spider-Man make more sense in the MCU, but I'm just saying it leaves a massive plot hole in the MCU. And this is only the beginning of the issue, because what if Sony at some point down the line say, you know what, we're going to take the full rights back to Spider-Man, pulling him from the MCU forever, meaning that no more MCU Spider-Man movies will be made, and Tom Holland can't legally show up in a Marvel Studios solo production. How does the MCU explain where Spider-Man went when he never shows up ever again, either in team-up movies or either in shows or movies that take place in New York, or why has there never been a movie or any mention of Spider-Man ever again? I think the MCU has some big issues with Spider-Man going forward if this was to ever happen. And we're getting the first glimpses of it at this moment in time as well, with Tom Holland only having one movie left on his contract that limits where he can show up. As we've seen in She-Hulk and Falcon and the Winter Soldier as the prime examples, he can't show up, even though, as the writers have mentioned, it would just make total sense for the story. Now, before anyone gets me wrong, I just want to put this out there. I don't think they should just throw Spider-Man into anything willy-nilly just because they can or just because he could show up. Obviously, I'd like to limit the amount of times that he shows up to the times that actually make sense. In the prime example with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think it does make total sense for Spider-Man to show up in that situation. For the story and continuity, this is not something that is new in the MCU, as in Iron Man 3. Why did the Avengers not show up? I have no idea. It's been an issue that's been plaguing the MCU for a long time, but as we've gone further on, we've seen the MCU using this ability to have multiple characters show up in different places when it makes sense. But when it comes to Spider-Man, it's a little bit different because, as we know, the rights with Sony, it makes things a little difficult to put him in wherever they want. Also, quick side note before we do end the video, I also do want to point out, although this is a massive issue in the MCU at this current point in time, and if the contract is not renewed, this could get even worse, Sony and Disney's relationship with each other is actually stronger than ever, so even though it might not happen just of yet, expect there to be a new contract at some point in the future. Obviously, nothing is confirmed at this point in time, so we can't really say if it's 100% confirmed, but there is still a chance that it might happen, so this could be a huge problem for the MCU going forward in the future. But expect a new contract to be signed between the two of them for more Spider-Man movies at some point down the line, as both companies have both expressed their interest in continuing the Tom Holland Spider-Man franchise. Now, that's my big issue with MCU Spider-Man at this point in time. If you guys do agree with me, leave a like on this video and also tell me in the comment section down below, what do you think about this? Do you agree? Don't you agree? Don't you think it's an issue at all? Or do you think it is going to be a problem that grows increasingly bigger as we move forward in the MCU? Especially if Sony, Tom Holland and Disney do not extend that contract. He only has one more movie left on his slate. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to like on it. Make sure to subscribe if you are new for more Spider-Man content, including videos like this and the news from the games and movies and the shows. Make sure to hit the bell as well so you do not miss another video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and peace.